I'd like to bring this meeting to order, and first order of business is to ask Reverend Davis to do the invocation, but then we be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those of you who have not been here for a minute, we're pledging to that flag instead of turning around backwards.
Almighty, most loving and gracious and merciful God, we thank you for the blessings you bestow on us and on this city. We ask today that you guide us to make good and right decisions, to open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to all that we hear today. Amen.
The next item is item C, which is, item D, which is the approval of the agenda. I have two issues that I'd like the board to consider. One is to move item number 4 up to number 2 because Alderman Lay has to leave for a family medical issue. And so 4 would become 2, and number 5, adding one, which would be the Cannon Foundation, and it's just a vote to accept some money from the Cannon Foundation. So, do you want to do them together or separately?
Question, is this a direct swap, 4 for 2, and 2 moves to the 4th position, or what?
No, 4 would move to 2. And then after that, we would have filming, setting the date, and the Cannon Foundation.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those amendments.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, agenda number 1 is the Center for the Creative Arts in Southport. Mark, are you ready to go, sir? Do you know how to turn the mic on, sir?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. As some of you may know and be familiar, I'm here on behalf of the Center for the Arts in Southport. And my name is Mark Bashera, and I appreciate you inviting us to give you some information on what we are and what we hope to do. And you have a copy of these slides that I'm going to go through, and I am going to present some information to you, but please feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. This is for your information, not for my benefit of presenting. So I just want everyone to make sure they have all the facts and info as we go along. We were set up late last year specifically for the purpose of renovating the old City Hall, as you may be aware. And our idea is to provide a self-sustaining center for the arts, meaning our revenues would hopefully exceed our costs with maintaining this building. And we also would like to be a host center for civic meetings, including alderman meetings just like this. As wonderful as this space is, I understand you guys are in need of a more permanent solution for meetings. We also hope to host other gatherings, performances, and all the while preserving the historic integrity of the building, which I believe steps are already being taken to do that, and I believe that's a step in the right direction. And ultimately, we hope we can help you do that. This is just some information of who is on our board that was assembled recently. It's a wealth of talent across many different areas that are all relevant to what we're trying to do. Some of us are skilled in construction, law and governance, fundraising, grants, and programming, marketing, you name it. We have somebody that can fit just about any role we need them to at this point. So again, as I said, our objective is to collaborate with the city to provide a center, an artistic hub, all while preserving the heritage of Southport with this beautiful and historic building. So we have the Up Your Arts retained an architect to provide some renderings to show what could be possible with this building. And so some of it you'll see here, and there's some slides you can see around the room here to take a closer look. But these are just a bit of a glimpse at what we have in mind. So while maintaining the historic integrity of the exterior, there will be some significant changes inside, as you might expect, along with outdoor meeting places, rooftop areas, a little bit of parking. And the next slide goes into more specific ideas, and of course all this is subject to change. If I'm not mistaken, I believe there's some money left to revise these plans to the tune of around $57,000 that we have available to revise these with the architects if needed, and I fully expect that to be part of the process. But most importantly, you'll see the big section E there, which I'm told would seat roughly around 240 people. That's what we would have in mind for a dual purpose sort of convertible meeting space for the aldermen, and also a concert hall, and that would have all the state-of-the-art equipment involved. And then the rest of the space, as you can see, would have meeting rooms, other event spaces, showrooms, even a proposed kitchen for teaching culinary arts and things like that. Just a couple more renderings there of the outside. Okay. So the interior, just a couple more pictures for you there. But yeah, we're looking at even a coffee lounge, gallery, gift shop, classrooms. So where are we? So you'll see there's a little blank space there. I don't know how to get that in. There it is. Okay. So where we are is, back in 2019, Up Your Arts, Save the Hall started, then entered into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Southport. Got the fundraising for the architectural renderings, which we have been shared with you here. And then late last year, as I mentioned, this board was developed specifically for this purpose. We have our 501c3 status and are ready to go. We're ready to raise funds. We're ready to start on this project. However, we're at a point where we need a commitment to collaborate with the city to do so. So after we would be able to obtain that, then we can begin the fundraising campaign that would lead to construction, to completion, to operation, to maintenance of the building. Okay, so you might be asking, well, how are we going to do this? And we've considered several funding sources, okay? And there's a lot of different ways we can raise the money. This has been done before. I'm highlighting probably the two on the top left are probably the best bet to raise funds and the quickest way possible, and that's historic preservation, development, or tapping into state legislature or receiving endowment grants. So figuring that out. So the way we estimate it, these grants and government funds can, and I'm not talking about Southport government funds, I'm talking about state funds, federal funds. We estimate could be $3 million or the entire cost of the project. Now, I mentioned the historic preservation tax credits, and we've investigated that, researched that. It may not be the way that you want to do this. primarily because those types of tax credits aren't available to municipalities. Okay, so that would involve retitling the deed of the building to a private developer. And that could be a private entity that we create and own the building while the city would lease back a portion of the building. It could be a very convoluted process to do it that way. It is possible, and it would cut about 35% of the total cost of the project. But a better way might be, earmarked funds from the state legislature or these grants from state organizations or national organizations to preserve historic places. And they can potentially fully fund the project, and they have. There's several recent examples of that being done. And most of them, minimum requirements are you just preserve the historic exterior of the building, which I think everybody wants to do already. We have the Lincoln County Courthouse has been, construction has either started or is soon to start, and they were, fully funded by state legislative earmarks. The county, I believe, owned the building and transferred the ownership to the town of Lincolnton, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe on completion, they will collaborate with private entities, nonprofit entities, to maintain and operate the building while potentially leasing some space, but no decisions have been made. Again, the building has not been completed at this point. But that's where we come in, if you would want to pursue that route. And again, it's been done in other places. You can look at Cary, Carrboro, Floyd, Virginia has done this. And then Shelby, North Carolina, with the Earl Scruggs Center, they renovated their county courthouse specifically for the purposes of arts and culture, history, and it's gone very well. They're actually open and running now, and they were fully funded by a pretty large grant from the North Carolina Humanities Council, who's also supported by the National Endowment for Humanities. So they're operating, it's not something where we would have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to pursue these avenues. A lot of this was brought to my attention by a meeting I had with, we had some of us with the North Carolina School of Government to let us know what options are available and how to do it. They're a great resource for, how to get from A to B or A to Z, because they've done it before, and they're just a massive resource, and they're willing to help. So what we're doing, regional and community. So if it comes to that regional and community fundraising, we would definitely pursue that, and we have plans in mind on how to get there. So what we're doing is seeking a follow-up workshop so perhaps we could negotiate a lease. And at one time we thought maybe a lease would be sufficient for this purpose. However, it may not be enough to satisfy everything that needs to be done. So either a public-private partnership, as some of these other cities and counties have pursued for these restoration projects, where we can benefit our residents and also benefit the civic needs of the city. And at that type of meeting, we would establish, what the roles of each party would be, that being the city and our board, who would do what. We would establish what the city needs as far as use, how often, and for what purpose, and things like that. So we could really collaborate on, what's going to transpire. The board that we've established would obviously be ready to handle the construction from start to finish, handle the operation thereafter, and all the while, provide a place where the city can conduct business. So I leave you with a couple of comments here that I found, and I sent a copy of this study that was performed taken under by the Arts and Economic Prosperity organization. They did a study on the economic impact of the arts and cultural organizations and their audiences in North Carolina, and a lot of it had to do with tourism. And as we all know, tourism is a really big thing here. And so you can really impact on what kind of tourists come. Their findings found that cultural tourists tend to spend more money while they're here. And the arts have proven to be a tourism driver for everything else. And arts, they've also found, were good for your physical and mental health. And as more concrete numbers, they've determined that the nonprofit arts is a $2.12 billion industry within North Carolina alone. It's supporting 72,000 jobs, generating $201.5 million in local and state government revenue. So I think it's kind of a rising tide effect if we're able to establish a center, a hub for these arts that we can support the entire arts community in Southport and provide an attraction, an event space, a multi-purpose building that everyone could use and everyone could benefit. It seems like a win-win if we can do this without burdening the taxpayer in Southport. So it's just one option. I know it's a decision that has to be made. I know it's been sitting there vacant for a while. The sooner we can come to an agreement on the fate of the building, the better for everyone. And the sooner we can get in there and use that building. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions if you have any. I'll do my best to answer. I don't have all the answers, but I have some support here that might be able to help me with that.
Mark, let me ask you a question. The huge meeting hall you have there, one of the problems we have here is that we have to get in line with everybody else. If that was a space that you could use for concerts and whatnot, or for the Board of Aldermen, would we have to get in line there, or would the Board of Aldermen bump everybody else? Would we have first priority there?
Yes, that is something we could negotiate, I believe. Because we understand that is a priority. It's something that the city has a responsibility to the taxpayers to meet and get things done. However, it is a critical element of the sustainability of the building. Live performances tend to bring in probably the bulk of the revenue that that the building would provide on an annual basis. So that's the type of thing that would probably need to be examined really closely to see how often, if something came up, that the aldermen would be able to meet if needed, on what basis. And we've certainly considered that, but it is kind of a critical element. If something is planned, that's going to bring in a substantial amount of revenue, obviously can't move it. Now, depending on things like how much notice we have, accommodations can be made wherever possible, whenever possible.
Right now, we have 2 regularly scheduled meetings a month. In my opinion, that would need to be blocked out. That would have to take precedence over anything. I mean,
Absolutely.
You can schedule that a year in advance or 2 years in advance, because that's something that we do regularly. Mm-hmm. I think that has to take precedence.
Mm-hmm. That was part of our plan, is to have it at a minimum those 2 regularly scheduled meetings every month, and then plan the events around that. And I don't anticipate it being full at all times, but that would be, as great as that would be, I think it's probably unlikely and unrealistic.
Alderman Spencer?
I'm going to just tail on to what Alderman Lay said. We're 9 o'clock in the morning. We're 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're emergency meeting next week. We don't know our schedule. Mm-hmm. We never know our schedule. If something comes up, we're going to have it. So it's hard to face that reality, mm-hmm. that we'll only be able to use it if it works.
Understood.
That's difficult.
It could be, but in my experience, most live performances tend to be in the evening. So if you guys could schedule during the day, this is a convertible space, and the setup wouldn't be, that dramatic of a change, from a daytime alderman meeting to a nighttime performance. I think it would be relatively simple to change that.
I'm going to go with you on the other side of the coin. Yes, we could do certain time periods and work that through, but there is that great question. What will be more important? And I understand. The
Well, I think we
revenue's
realize-
paying the bills is more important.
Yeah.
There are two sides to it, and again, I'm just both sides.
But
Mr. Mayor, I
Go ahead.
I agree with both of the statements from Alderman Spencer and Lay, and I think that if we're going to continue this path, there could be, we schedule 5 meetings a month so that we do have those allotted times. I mean, it's not unrealistic to think, we've got more than 5 meetings this month, right? So, right, so, I mean, and right. So that's one of the issues that we're really facing. And then, our poor staff, their time and effort in putting this together and taking this down, and this week we're here and next week we're at Indian Trail. For us as a group, we're trying to find a solution that doesn't require that. Our meetings don't, our Thursday evening meeting doesn't end until 10 o'clock, and they're still here, well after that. So, certainly willing to come to the table with ideas about how we scheduled those meetings, if that's the direction, we're going to go.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Streaming our meetings has become important, so that would need to be built into that
You're going to
room.
have to talk into it.
Streaming our meetings is very important, and we would need that to be built into that space as well as a microphone system and all of that. I think we were quoted at $40,000 for something similar in this space and Indian Trail, if I remember correctly. So that would be an absolute requirement for us to even be able to consider moving forward with something like that.
Oh, definitely. And I think that would absolutely be part of it. And that's the great thing about being able to partner on this. You would have some opportunities to say what is needed, what do you need exactly and precisely, so we can design this around your purpose and our purpose collectively. And so by the time it's a finished product, whether you reserve the room 5 times a month or not, and whether you use it or not, it's blocked off already. And we could design that performance hall in a way that there is no setup and takedown for staff, unnecessarily. We could design it specifically so it's a permanent home for the alderman. And, if it's available at a moment's notice, then it's available, and no one has to come set up, and no one has to, get things ready. So it could be a really good thing as long as we design it together, and that's what this collaboration would be.
You need that area for a blank, it looked like it was a blank stage upstairs, is that correct?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. The room looked like it was just a large empty room, and so it's got a lot of areas that we can sort of design within the room that would meet this dual purpose.
So that used to be a great dais, I guess, the platform was set up permanently. So I don't know how you would mix that with performing and things like that. You're going to need that empty stage. So there would be some turnover, some setup.
It could be, and that's a question for those board members that are in construction, that are in design, that are more knowledgeable on that subject. But I think with enough time, and these things do take time, we could design something that would be minimal effort on the turnover.
Maybe on a humorous note, if we do this and we have spectators out there, people that just like we have here today, we wouldn't have these torturous chairs again, would we?
I'm not sure. The chair, we could certainly get your input on the chairs when it comes time.
Alderman Mosteller, did you have something?
I really just had a comment. I appreciate all my fellow aldermen's comments. I would I went through on the internet and and I actually came to Lincolnton because I was looking for North Carolina courthouses. They have on their website is awesome. There's all these
printouts of their process and everything, which I thought was wonderful. And it's actually called Courthouse Adaptive Reuse. There's actually a terminology for what we're trying to do. And so what I would ask is that our board consider sitting down and brainstorming to try to create, to use Mark's words, win-win. We're having budget talks later. We're all aware of the financial obligations that a project like this would be. So I think it would be important for us to sit down and brainstorm and just see what is possible. Y'all have already been talking about some of it.
Alderman Davis.
Thank you. This is a question for you. I'm looking at the profile of the building, and you have a substantial addition in the back. Mm-hmm. Now, recognizing that what the courthouse was in the early 1800s, I know that the two wings on the sides were added, so they're not original, but adding something this big and this new, how does that coincide with historic integrity?
Yes.
I think it may be an impediment to getting historic grants.
It could, and obviously, were we able to be successful in getting one of those grants, we would absolutely have to follow whatever parameters are provided. So if these renderings need to be modified to meet those standards and requirements, we would absolutely do that. Again, this is just an idea. This is a picture of what could be. It's not set in stone. We have funds available to modify these renderings according to whatever standards we're given.
I was, not to justify this, Lo, but I was pretty instrumental in this process at that time when Lyle Architecture was hired. I will tell you that David has an extensive knowledge of historic renovation and preservation. So one of the things that we've learned through our experience with SHPO is that when you're doing a renovation to a historic property, they certainly want to see a deviation from what is new versus what has been existing. So they don't want to make an addition look like it's been there 120 years. Kind of a delineation. So I think in keeping with that concept and idea, this could fit within that. I'm not saying I support it or trying to justify it, but the space is needed, and it adds quite a bit of additional square footage.
Thanks for the assist, Mr. Carroll.
Any other questions?
One other thing, if you do a project like this, you're going to have to do an extensive amount of work to redo this building. We know that there's asbestos in there. And when that building was built, the only thing that didn't have asbestos was the toilet paper. So there's going to be a lot of asbestos. You're going to have to put a tent around it. And you have any idea, or have you talked about any idea how long it will take to renovate the building?
I'm sure we have, but I can't recall exactly what that timeline is. If anyone here was on the building committee, I don't think we have any concrete numbers, but yes, you're right, that it will be a monumental project and it will take time.
Regardless of how it's done.
Right.
Robert, did you have something?
Well, just my limited experience with commercial construction, even if they had $4 million to start the project today, I think you're looking at probably 3+ years to remedy what's existing and put back.
My own experience with renovations is that it costs twice as much and takes twice as long as you thought at the beginning.
Fair enough.
I am just guessing, but I'm assuming we're going to have a motion here to follow up on what Alderman Mosteller said, to have a further discussion. So with that said, the idea that we're going to have day meetings in order to accommodate a play or music and had 3 people in this audience, which is what we get for day meetings, as opposed to a packed house in the evenings, that's going to have to be seriously looked at, because we had the morning one put in to do presentations as educational process for us. And we know from our experience that the day meetings, virtually, if we have one person sitting here, it's a lot. So the purpose of a government function is to have the citizens come to us and talk about that. And another factor to think into this is that as the city moves forward to rent this building more often and to maximize the city's part of it, there's the competition part, but we'll talk about that later. The issue that you have is that building does not have to be like an exclusive Alderman meeting. It can be the planning board meeting, it can be the Board of Adjustment meeting, it can be committee meetings that need a place to meet. So that calendar could be really full, and that cuts into your profit margin to run the building. Otherwise, the only other option is for the city to either purchase land, knock some buildings down, and build a multi-million-dollar other building. All of those things probably will have to be discussed in these future discussions. But with that said, if there's no other questions, I'm assuming Alderman Mosteller wants to make a motion.
Well, if I need a motion, I will say that I would like to make a motion to, when our new city manager gets on board, to schedule a series of meetings with this committee and this nonprofit to brainstorm and to see what we can do together. With public input.
I just want to clarify so Mr. Terrell knows what he's getting into. So you want just the city manager to do the negotiations? Is it
No.
going to be this board? Is it going to be a subcommittee of this board? So I have clarification for him when he gets here.
I think we need to have a joint meeting with the 2 boards
All
with
of us,
public
yeah.
input.
I just meant so when he was here to help follow through with it.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Excuse me. Is there a second?
Could we get a restating of that motion?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alderman Davis. I would like to make a motion that we schedule several meetings, brainstorming sessions with the nonprofit Arts Center and this board, and schedule that once the new city manager is in place, to allow for public input as well.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye and raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, it's 5-1. Just for the, I'm sorry, 4-2. I apologize. Just for your edification, we're all going to have individual meetings with the new manager when he comes on board the first part of July. So I'm assuming that this will be a part of a discussion for most of the board members to have that, figure out those dates and stuff like that, just to put it all in perspective. Okay? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go to the new number 2, which is the fiscal year 2024-25 budget deliberations. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to leave if you wish like to leave. No, not you.
There you go. Flo, here's the issues. Thank you.
get going again. So, City Manager, if you'd like to start this?
Yes, I will start off. So this is the day we have to have your final decisions because we need to put together the budget ordinances before your final meeting next week. So we need all the final decisions today. I handed out to all of you, I had requested all of you to give me the issues you want to revisit. This is the list that came back to me from 2 of you. And so, Mayor, however you want to handle this. One thing I do want to bring up before we start, if you go to the Capitol in your budget book, which I don't think there's page numbers, but there is a little tab that says CIP. If you go there, I could probably help you take it down a cent. Right now, you're at $1,178,000. So if you took out the penny increase in taxes and taking $266 from the general fund surplus, you still have money to pay for what's remaining there under projects. The other thing is under Old City Hall environmental for $700,000. We got the bids in yesterday. We had 4 bids. They came in a lot lower than we thought, but I mean, that's the good news. The bad news is we had somebody take a look at the HVAC system. It is gone. And when I say gone, it means the ductwork is gone, everything is gone in that thing. So I would say if you're going to reduce it, you reduce it to probably $400,000 instead of the $700 that's there. Because the bids came in really well for the actual abatement. They're still, High Caps is still doing the analysis, but the high bid came in around $200,000.
The 700,000 came out of the capital fund, did it not?
Correct.
So that, reducing that down to 400,000 would not change the budget, would it? For this year?
For next year, yeah.
For this year?
Oh, for this year, no.
It would not change the budget?
Correct.
Okay. So even if we went with the 700,000 and we didn't spend it, it would, one way or the other, it would not impact the budget except for the penny that was going to go towards the capital fund.
Penny and the general fund surplus money we're
Correct.
going to grab,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Have as an introduction.
I say
Could you say again what you said about the, right at the beginning about the CIP and if we reduced and so forth?
Because you've reduced it, if you look at the tab, to $1,178,625, wait, am I reading that right? Yes, 625. If you took out the penny increase in taxes and then the general fund surplus you were going to take, you'd still have enough in there because currently you have $1,447,000 in the capital. So you'd still have enough money to cover what you still want to do under projects. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. But I need a motion so that we know it's official, if that's what you're going to do.
So,
I
I'm just brainstorming here for all of, Robert, you go first.
I'm sorry, I left my mic on. I don't think that's a good idea because we have massive capital in front of us, but
But you remember, you have to assign all the capital money to a project or it goes into the general fund. Now, if you come up with a project, like, I don't know, I'm just going to say this, supposing, oh my God, all of a sudden the dredging's moving faster than you thought and we need $700,000, then you're going to go into the fund balance and grab $700,000. You know what I'm saying? I know it is because you have a lot of good fund balance money. But you have to assign the money. You can't just let it languish in that account.
But if we took it down to 400,000 as an example, and then between this hypothetically speaking, the work actually was done, and we wanted to do some more, we can't go back into the fund balance in mid-year and take more out, correct? In other words, there's another issue. We have to have an air conditioning system in that building. Otherwise, there's no sense doing any work. So if the remediation is only to rip the walls down and encapsulate the asbestos, without that, I can't remember the figure, but it was pretty high to bring in a temporary AC unit and run the pipes in it.
That's why Mr. Stanley has been looking at just replace it, do it once and for all. We don't have the price yet. Mansfield's coming in next week, now that we know that the duct work.
I'd keep the 7.
So the problem is that we may need the 700,000 to put the new AC in it.
Yeah, we doubt it, but,
Keep the 700.
okay, it was just a suggestion. But no matter what, you can still grab the penny and the fund
Correct,
balance.
correct. So
If I had a motion.
I'm going to ask the board their desire here. We have in front of us a document that the people at home and here do not have, and that is a bunch of questions that we've asked, which indicates that we actually do listen to the people saying, what about this, what about that? Do you want someone to read the question and the answer that we've got, or how do we want to proceed with this to show that we actually are really focusing back again on the budget?
Just so everyone knows, that answer and question list is on the website. So you can go there at any point. Cheyenne, under which department or where do they find it?
On the homepage where the public notices are, the public notice for this meeting, the June 21st, 2024 special budget deliberation meeting, is where you will find those questions and answers.
And we have sent those answers to the people who asked the questions. And we've received responses, I think, from almost everybody but one, that they were very appreciative of receiving those responses.
Nonetheless, in order to reach as many people as possible, because I frequently find that even though it's on the website, even though it's on the email blast, people miss it. So I think reading it into this meeting, where people can actually come to the recording and hear it, would be erring on the side of reaching as many people as possible, so people know and hear this.
I'm a no.
I just need to say something. Frank's got to leave.
Yeah,
He wants to take
let's handle
votes.
this stuff. Let's
We
handle this
we
stuff.
can maybe do this later.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
can,
But
You're absolutely
Frank's
correct.
gotta
Let's, if it's okay with the board, we'll return to this, reading this, and whether or not we do it or not. But I would like Frank to be able to ask all his questions and get his input. So, Mr. Lay, you're up, sir. Any particular questions you have?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we have.
Okay, if you look at this list, the first 9 are Frank's, and the rest are Lowe's. And so, if you want to do it that way, Mayor, Frank can go right down his list.
Frank, go ahead. You
Okay.
got 1 through 9, I think.
Okay, yes. We had talked about adding a full-time person for the community building and whatnot to cover the gaps, weekends and whatnot. If we use volunteers, do we really need to have that person? Is that something we want to look at, or do we want to reconsider that?
Well, part of that is there's a job description. Is that what you've got, ma'am?
So volunteers was not something that I was asked to specifically look into, so I don't have any feedback about volunteers, but I did make a sheet that everybody got in their packet that explains a little more clearly what I was trying to, it's actually the other side, Karen, so sorry. Explains a little bit more clearly how my budget in particular works with the community building, as well as what we do over in Fort Johnston, and combined what that bottom line would look like for the 2025 fiscal year if we did include the full-time staff member for this building. On the back, I also included a little chart. There seemed to be some confusion during the public forum about how we were restructuring, and so I just wanted to make that a little bit more clear for you all today. The custodian position would be changing just slightly, but there was some confusion about whether this full-time staff member that we were bringing to the table would be doing custodial work as well as facilitating work. The answer to that question is no. The full-time custodian position is actually a position that already exists under Public Works, and we would be adding some of the duties of this building to that Public Works position, still keeping a very part-time, probably less than 10 hours a week position to cover some of the overlap, so that full-time staff member could still have their 2 days off a week. But again, I was not asked about volunteers specifically, so I don't have information regarding that.
Thank you.
One thing about volunteers, because they're volunteers, they can always go on vacation. They can say no. The docents for the old jail, the scheduling of that is like herding cats. And the old jail sometimes can't open because there's just not enough volunteers available, although they're willing, but they're on vacation or they've got other things going on, so they say no.
Yeah,
If we rely on just volunteers for this, then we're in trouble.
I realize that's the fly in the ointment there, because we don't know when they're available, but that's just, it's just a thought.
Can we just go through the list and maybe get consensus on each of these items?
Well, we can, but I'm a little confused now. The full-time position that we're adding,
Yes.
we started that conversation off that they would be in this building maybe 2 days a week, but the rest of their job would be to coordinate with the nonprofits, 501c3s, special events type of thing. Is that not still in the game plan?
Yes, that is still in the game plan, but rather than this position that we're specifically talking about, those duties would be assigned to the community building manager, who would only be in this building 2 days a week. This person's primary focus would be the community building, giving the other employee that we already currently have, who has already started working on learning how to do these duties, more availability to focus on nonprofit and nonprofit work.
All right, that's a change up that I was not aware of.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I don't think any of us. Right? The whole purpose of that additional employee when we first started this conversation was that they were going to work with the nonprofits, because somehow in Never Never Land somebody got the idea, or more than one person got the idea, that we're never going to work with nonprofits and 501c3s, which was crazy talk, just crazy talk, because that was never part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I want to say real quick is we've consistently worked with nonprofits out of your office.
Yes.
So I'm not clear on why you need somebody out of the community building working for with nonprofits, because I thought that was part of your job duties.
So yes, part of my job duties currently is to bridge that gap between the city and nonprofits. Yes, that is correct.
Well, I tell you, Robert, I am very frustrated with this conversation. Not because of you, obviously. Just I'm very frustrated with this conversation. We started off down this path, and somehow we made a left-hand turn, and I have no idea why we made the left-hand turn. Because it was, we're hiring a person to concentrate, to be the city representative, to work with the nonprofits and the 501c3s, and to do that. And the idea was that during the off-season, there may not be as much work to do for a full-time employee, so how do we combine two functions in one position? And when I sat down in this chair today, that is the path I thought we were going in. And I'm not sure we're going there now.
That would be the conversation with the nonprofits, plus increasing the value of this building.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe we're still on the same page. I'm not entirely sure what the question specifically is, but I think that from where I'm standing, we are all still on the same page. Yes, that is what this person would be doing. They would be the person.
Okay, then I misunderstood you, and I apologize.
No, that's totally fine. This person would be the person who is specifically working events in the community building, We also have a full-time manager who manages the bookings and things like that, who already starts working with these nonprofits from the start of event planning. So they would continue doing that, but then they would take on the additional responsibility of joining them at the table of these meetings and visiting with the nonprofits and making sure all of that was handled. And then this full-time person would be able to focus on being physically at the events so they could run the event while the event was going on.
Now, somewhere along the lines, a statement of job function was supposed to be developed. Was that developed?
Yes. Do you happen to have a copy of that, Patty? Okay.
We can send that out to you
Yes.
once we're done here.
So will this events person be dealing with the 4th of July like you have done, or will that be still your job?
That 4th of July would still remain under me. We have a contract for the entirety of the department to help with the 4th of July. So myself would sit at the helm with the 4th of July board, but I would still be able to ask all 3 of these full-time employees for help with different functions of the 4th of July.
You have kept me alive in the committee, so I can see how you would need help there. And that's the key thing there, taking advantage of these events and monetizing them and making sure we're getting the money for these events is crucial. So I appreciate you. You've done a great job.
I too am frustrated and I guess confused because I thought we were talking about an events coordinator, manager, who would do that very thing, coordinate and manage all events that involve the city, not be focused on uses primarily in this building. And that is what came across to me as a good cost saving for us, consolidating into one person these kinds of things. And so this is not where this has gone. Is that correct?
No. So I'm struggling a little bit. Let's flip to the chart on the back. I'm thinking that might be helpful to you. So the original question, the very first question I was asked was, if the events that the city had taken over created enough revenue to justify a full-time events person, the answer to that question was no. But then I started looking into other revenue streams that we have through this building. So what I had proposed and what I'm reiterating for everyone today is that the building and events manager at the top of that chart, that person would be responsible for booking and maintaining this building, as well as sitting at the table for nonprofits, helping to manage these events, helping to organize these events, which would open up the room for the building and events specialist to then physically help with these events, help the manager actually staff these events, and then staff the events occurring at this building. I'm hoping that makes more sense.
So I think one of the issues that I have is this building hasn't made us money in the last 2 years at least, right? So we lose money every year on this building. Is that correct?
If you're looking at just the community building line item alone, undetermined yet for 2024 because we're not at the end, but in 2023, yes. But at the bottom, when you combine both of my budgets together, between this building and community relations combined, we are still a moneymaker.
And how much more booking in this building do you think is possible? What is projected? What have y'all?
We projected for 2024 that we would make $175,000. We are estimated to not only meet but exceed $175,000 in 2024. In 2025, I have estimated that we will make $200,000.
Is that before expenses?
Yes.
After expenses, do we have a figure?
It would be negative $26,699 with the full-time employee added into those figures.
I just emailed you the job description that's proposed. Thank you, Dory.
So all the other, I'm trying to ask this question. Trust me, I'm not,
No.
I'm not picking on you.
Absolutely.
Okay. We've had a figure of $200,000 tossed out time and time again in this room. And then at some point in time, there was another figure tossed out of $54,000, which I interpreted, might be my bad, that was actually the profit margin between the cost of running the building, employees and all of that, from gross to net. That $54,000 figure, I was incorrect on, is that correct?
I'm not sure where 54 came from. I'm sorry.
But you're
That-
telling me that last year we ran a deficit.
We
In
lost
20
$94,000.
Yes, in 2023, for this building alone, if you're only looking at this half of my budget, we were at a deficit of 94,000. Down at the bottom, when you combine both of my budgets back, we did earn money in 2023 of $12,231. But
And your budget did not include last year monies that we might be able to obtain from vendors and stuff like that.
correct. That will be shown in 2024 budget line item when we get the final numbers.
And do you have any idea what that would be?
Lance, do you have any idea what that would be so far in 2024?
I don't have the most updated, but I want to clarify, the loss of 94,000 in FY '23, are you looking at the, Alderman Carroll, or can you tell me what you're looking at? Because
Yeah, hold on.
Is that a negative number?
that's a profit, sir.
That's a profit.
If you look at the revenue number that says $200,000, at the top, 201,142,
Yep.
you subtract all of the expenses below it, the revenue exceeds the expenses. That's not loss, that's profit.
So then, in fact, she lost, the two combined lost 12,000.
If you were to look at if you were to take the tourism into account as well as the community building, you take the two of them together, in 2023, they cost the city $12,000 net.
And we're projected to cost the city $36,000.
That is correct, and I don't have this to calculate directly, but I believe the number that the mayor was referring to, the 54,000, was the community building, which is now $26,999 before we added that extra person in.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a suggestion because there just seems to be too many questions too late. I'd like to recommend that you just take it out, have the new city manager make an analysis for you and bring it back to you come January or something like that. But there's too many unanswered questions, and at this point, we got so many other things to go through that we just go that route.
And for the record, if we brought it back in January in mid-budget cycle, that an amendment to the budget could be made?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that good for you?
I'm completely comfortable with that decision.
So is there a motion on the floor?
Move that we remove this from budget consideration, revisit at a later date with the possibility of amending the budget to accommodate it.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Is there any conversation?
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate doing this because I know that we have lost two part-time employees have lost their positions because of this merger. And it's interesting that we're creating new positions when we've had to let two people go. So that's disturbing. So it's like I'm not ready to create anything until I find those two people another job.
Lance, this is really confusing. So we've got numbers that are in brackets, which in my budget means a negative number. And then at the bottom of this, it says financial performance, and it says fiscal year 2025 projected net loss of $26,699.
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
And then, while they're doing that, the other thing I just want to bring up is,
That's not my
we're
I
probably
haven't-
looking at
I don't know
diminishing
that.
returns from our local occupancy tax now that we have put in place a system that reports those that were doing Airbnb or VRBO with out permits prior to the July 7th, 2021 date, 2022 date. So we're probably looking at diminishing returns on our local occupancy tax as well.
All right, there's a motion on the floor and there's a second. Any other comment? Not hearing any. Do you have something, sir? No. Okay. Then all in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Is there any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Frank, number 2, sir.
I think we've already handled that with all the discussion we had earlier with Mr. Bashar's comments and whatnot. So I think that's handled.
You want to go down to,
Number 3, the,
is that ETF?
it should, yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't know where that's going because we don't know what's happening with the ETJ, with the new bill that's being shuffled out there. So, if my original thinking was if we lost the ETJ, would we doing as many inspections and things out there? So how would that affect our manning? Again, just with the new bill, we don't know where that's going, so that's probably.
Well, I'm not sure that we shouldn't talk about it, because if it's going to impact employees, they should have, if it goes through and it's going to
Correct.
impact employees, I would want to give them as much heads up as to what that would be.
Right. If in fact it does go through, how would that affect employees?
All right, so right now, we've already discussed this week. In fact, the employees that could be affected, I've already spoken to them because I only thought it was fair that they knew about a discussion today and not be surprised. So it could be code enforcement, then you could take the director position of planning or the additional planner, one or the other. An administrative clerk, but one of the administrative clerks is doing historic preservation to help out, and then a building inspector. So that's what we have right now.
Does that answer your question, Alderman Lay?
Yes, it does.
Okay, the next one would be what?
I have a question, back to Bonnie. If we lose the ETJ, we're looking at losing one of the building inspectors?
Yes, because you wouldn't have enough inspections to be doing it.
Okay, even with, once we have the historic preservation regulations and inspections would have to be looking at those?
I mean, I just had to go by what our chief's building inspector, I talked with Mr. Barefoot about this.
And then wouldn't we also potentially lose a fire inspector also?
No,
Because we have
I
two
already
right now.
asked. The thing is most of those the major fire inspection buildings are here. They're not in the ETJ.
But they're also in the fire district, right?
That's
So the
right,
fire
yeah.
district extends to the ETJ.
Yeah, the district is
So all
bigger.
the ETJ is going to get those fire inspections anyway. Because
So-
it has nothing to do, fire inspections have nothing to do with the ETJ, it's the fire district.
But our fire inspections are only in the city limits, as I understand it.
They're in the fire district.
I don't
No,
think
because
so.
those that are
They're
in the
they're
county
city.
pay to the county.
The county's doing the,
The county does. Ralph could
Ralph, you're
answer.
gonna have to go to the mic.
You didn't know you'd end up there coming to sit in here today.
Chief Drew had already asked for this day off. That's why he's not here.
Yes, so the county does the extra area outside, but we still have to do our pre-plans and everything that we need to keep our ISO rating. So we will need the additional to continue to do the fire plans.
That's a split job. Is that what you're saying? Doing the ISO plans is different from inspections, or no?
Yes, so the inspections is rolled into one part, and then we do the pre-plans as well, that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Bonnie, so if we lose the ETJ, can you do that rundown again of which positions we would lose, which full-time positions we would lose?
It would be code enforcement. Currently, right now, you have a full-time code enforcement and you have a private company. You could do either the director of development, which has been vacant for 10 months now, we can't find anybody, or you could do one of the planners. Administrative clerk, but currently one of the administrative clerk does the historic preservation portion, and one building inspector.
So I just want to be clear, because it's got historic preservation up in the building department, and then it's got it under the permitting. The vast majority, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the permit tech / historic planner is that one person.
No, we never filled the historic planner. We left that vacant. We had nowhere to put them because we were on top of each other, so we never filled that position.
Oh, I know that. But what I'm asking is, we currently are proposing to have the permit tech fill like a half position, that is the historical planner, and half permitting.
Well, I think part of it is we don't know how much time it's going to take for the historic.
Well, that's why I thought half-tracking it like that made sense for our first year. And I would like to know, and I'm sure Lance knows this conversation, because permitting pays for itself. That's all fee-driven. So permitting, correct me if I'm wrong, but permitting pays for itself.
But you have to remember the revenues are going to go down.
I hear all that, but we can't make a decision based on the data we don't have.
We can't make a decision on this now.
Oh, no, I agree with you, because you don't know if the bill's going to go through.
So the truth is, there are a lot of people that are upset and concerned. The whole transition that we've been talking about has been we're going to pay the cost for another year of employment for a lot of our employees to find out what the demand will be on us after we do away with this part of our legacy, I guess. So we don't know what the demand will be on us in any department. Well, I guess Parks and Rec, it's not always going to have the demand, but Public Works, the whole 9 yards, we don't here. So we've got to give this one more year to flush out, no matter whether we have to pay more than we should. And then over the year, the attrition hopefully will come through.
Frank, has your ETJ question been answered, sir?
Yes, it has.
Okay, because we only got 20 more minutes of your time. So cross-train the firefighters to EMTs is your next question?
Number 4 was more fund balance.
I'm sorry.
So we just
take
wanna
more
go-
fund balance, perhaps up to 70%?
Right, yeah, we got a big fund balance, and know why it's there. We don't know when the big wind's gonna come blowing through here. So we gotta have a substantial amount of money in there. But could we take that down some from, let's say, what is it, 86, take it down to maybe 70, 75, and just take something out of there? That's just a thought.
I'm a no.
Frank, I hear what you're saying, but we know we're going to have $700,000 next year for the dredge project and all of this. I'm reluctant. I hear you. I'm reluctant to do that because we're then going to try to use that for reoccurring expenses.
That's what I thought was going to be said. I just threw it out there.
Hey, I hear you.
I agree with you completely.
I know.
I just threw it out there.
Is that
Okay.
like
It's something to talk
recurring is
about.
like
It's always
gap
good to talk
funding?
about.
The same thing as gap funding, or is sort of?
Well, I like coming down to at least 70% because as we anticipate for next year, this is this year. So next year, if we did need more, remember that developments are coming online. As I've said in my notes to y'all, Osprey Landing is already building and selling. And by this time next year, we will be able to anticipate more. And so we need, in my opinion, to get this budget down. And that's one of the best ways to do it, I think, right now.
Thank goodness we developed something.
Okay, the only downside to that, Alderman Davis, would be the fact that we have next year, as Alderman Marcella pointed out, a large number of things going on, and this is a one-time deal. You take this down this year, it could potentially, let's say we took it down a penny. It's only going to help us for 1 year, and then the money's going to be gone. So, is that the best use of that money for a 1-year reprieve, as opposed to having it there in case the big one happens?
And just so, I looked at our neighbors, Charlotte keeps 90%, just so y'all know.
All right, so to move on and to follow Alderman Carroll's idea on this topic number 4, is there a motion to do anything on number 4? Or is it just a question, Frank?
Just a question.
Okay, so let's move on to the next topic.
I have a question
Okay,
about
go ahead,
that.
ma'am.
Why do we have a fund balance policy if we're keeping it so much higher than what the policy is? Okay, then why don't we change what the policy is?
Well, it's a minimum so that we have a reserve, I think. That's how I think of it, is that's the minimum we have.
So
Like
that's
if
the
we need to buy big things or spend for things, then we stop at 55. It's a
According
minimum.
to GFOA, it's a national policy that you need to have a fund balance policy, and there needs to be some type of a minimum in there. Because we are a hurricane or storm-related prone, they want you to have a higher amount, but the minimum is 55. But I mean, you can bring it down to 70 or 80, but you can only use that money for one-time expenses. You can't use it to offset the budget for recurring. But, you know, I agree. I think that you've got a lot of capital coming up that you're going to have. You know, we're applying for these grants that have matching funds, and if you don't come up with it, I hate to say it, but our name is mud when it comes to grants. If you apply and you don't even have the money to, you know, to give, so just a food for thought, that's all.
Alderman Kelly, I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm not sure that we have time to do a policy right now as we're looking, but certainly feel back up like in July if you want to find out what the policy should be. Is that amenable? Yeah. Okay. Alderman Lay, your next question is, sir?
We got some people that we're wanting to hire, bring them in. Is there any way we could cross-train them, give them an extra cert, an extra skill, so they could do both jobs when needed, fill gaps and whatnot? And to do that, if you got more certs, you'd probably want to have a different pay scale, bump them up because they've got more skills.
Chief Drew, oops, sorry, go ahead. Chief Drew had already given me an answer. They're already doing this practice. They cross-train the fire EMS and give a small percentage increase on successful completion. This would not help, though, with the current minimum staffing issues. It would still cause excessive overtime that they cannot afford to pay. So his recommendation is to stick with the original plan of 3 firefighters, 3 EMTs, and that's what's going to solve the shortage problem.
You answered my question.
So, what's the will of the board? Do we want to answer that question now so they can put the budget together for our vote on the 3 and 3 or any combination thereof?
Go with the 3 and 3.
I'm not compromising on the 3 and 3. I'm going to do that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion?
What's the motion, please?
The motion is to go with the fire chief's recommendation of hiring 3 EMTs and 3 firefighters. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
As I understood it from our budget deliberations earlier, the EMTs were going to come with really only a cost of about $4,000 because of the money that the chief was able to get from somewhere else, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's 4,000 total or 4,000 each?
No, it's 4,000 in total. Oh, I'm sorry, I dazed off for a moment. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Those who are in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Frank, we got 15 minutes left. You have a question here on merit pay and COLAs.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarification on that. COLAs I can understand, but that needs to be tied to whatever the CPI is. We said 3.5 here. What do we do if it's down to 3.2? So we need to make sure that it's within those guidelines. And on merit pay, going back to my old way of thinking, going back to the way I did things in the past, merit pays are not automatic. The only way you get a merit pay is if you do what you're doing and above. If you've got needs improvement, you don't get one. So again, I think we need some clarification on how we hand out merits.
I think if you shows up for your job and clocks in and clocks out and does your job description, you don't get one.
I've just my 2 cents worth. I've thought about this long and hard for a long time. This is a topic that needs to be flushed out in greater detail than we have now time to do. This is a topic for the next city manager and the HR director to come up with what we have to give them guidance as to what we think merit pay should be, because we actually set the guidance and then they execute the guidance. And so the current guidance right now is, and this is not just like new, this has been around for a long time. You can actually get 2 needs improvements on your evaluation and still get some portion of a merit pay. 40 years, state, local, federal government experience, I've never seen that. You got a needs improvement. Now, the other side of that coin is the employee should not find out that they need a needs improvement on the day they get the evaluation. And we need to look at all of those things. What do our policies do? How are we executing the policies? I would suggest that we hold off on this and ask the next city manager to work with the department heads to figure out something, but in the meantime, we'd actually have to give them some guidance. Is the merit pay system the way we want it now or not? But wait till Stuart gets here to do that. That's just my 2 cents.
I got a couple of things.
Mr. Mayor. I'd like to take that a step further and just, it's not enough about what we think, but we need to look at what's competitive within our market. So we're losing employees to surrounding markets. What are they doing and how are they doing it? So I'd like us to look at our competition, if you will, as a guideline and basis for whatever it is we create.
Understood, but that should be in consideration. But there are other options as well. But it's a longer discussion than we have today. Alderman Davis?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at what are we going to put in the budget, what are we going to take out of the budget. So clearly, we have plenty of employees who are going to deserve merit pay, maybe some that don't. We got to put some money into the budget for this, and by this time next week. So I want to make that point, plus the other. We have a jobs study that we have not yet adopted, and that needs to come up pretty quick. Not in the next week, but this is something that's very important, and that I've got some issues with some of the points in that one. But that does play right into our system of merit pay.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we do have money in the budget for the job study.
Correct, that is already in the budget.
Yep, and the merit pay and COLA are already there. So
correct.
My motion is to keep everything the same.
And in that way, as they go through this process and they change it, depending on how the changes, we have the money there to move forward with whatever the change, or save the money and use it for bonuses or something, whatever that could be.
So you propose that we don't take anything out of the budget right now?
We do
for
not take
personnel
out-
merit pay?
Correct.
Okay.
I agree with that. I was just throwing it out there as something that we need to look at as we go down the road to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. Maybe sometime down the road we can do something, but we certainly don't want to change what we got in there right now.
Now, Ms. Bonnie, if I'm not mistaken, that pay study money is under administrative.
Lance, where did we put it for now? Then we got to move it to line items if it's approved.
It's under administrative right now.
Any further discussion on this?
I do wonder, to make sure that the COLA, is there any reason, I know we've got the money in there, is there any reason we would evaluate that at July 1? I don't know how, to make sure, it could go either way, less or more.
The last, I guess, inflation rate that came out was 3.2% from this past month, rather than the 3.5 that we have in the budget right now.
You have to remember, when the manager's predicting this,
I know.
you're doing,
Say aye, and it's 4-2. Frank, you have inclusive playground, sir?
I'm just going to skip that.
You have down, eliminate the administrative vehicle?
Yeah, the one we have that sits there, that we've had conversations with Bonnie that really, it never goes in. We don't use it. We're paying a lease on it. I think, in my opinion, that just needs to go away.
Are you making a motion?
Question to the city manager?
no, I looked at the contract, that's not what it says. The contract with him says he's getting so much, but if he goes out of state for a conference, say, he's supposed to use a city vehicle, but we have other city vehicles, so he can just take something else.
How much do we save by eliminating this vehicle? Which, by the way, I'm in favor of, just general principles, but
Do you have it offhand, Lance?
We generally budget these at $7,000 a piece for lease, and then probably another $300 or $400 for gas, that kind of thing. So maybe $7,500.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion second. Any further discussion?
Can you get out of a contract like that quickly, or is it?
Yeah, what they end up doing is the lease program is a great idea. What they end up doing is just they'll sell them, we'll get proceeds, and that's it. It's gone.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. I'm not sure what protect EMS means. Okay.
We just did.
Fire inspection fees. This is Lowe's?
I think what I was saying was, if we can possibly get those increased, we would be able to go back and revisit the EMS and the new firefighters. I'm currently in favor of the firefighters, and I've just voted to okay the new EMS, so this is, scratch that right off.
Okay, I'm good with that. Let's move on to the next one is do not add city vehicles taken home only for those living in the city.
Okay, these are some of the things I said to y'all. How many new vehicles are we looking to add?
Is it 2, Lance, if I remember right? For Parks and Rec?
We've added vehicles in the year we're in right now.
No, next year.
Does this budget include any
New vehicles.
vehicles?
None that I'm aware of.
I thought there was another 15-passenger van for Parks and Rec.
That van is here today. It's here in place. It's not new for this next fiscal year.
And the next part, this is showing up in citizen complaints. It's interesting how citizens tend to seize on a particular topic, and then that becomes symbolic of the whole budget. So one of these examples is there is a perception that city employees who live way outside the city are taking the city vehicles home. And what is our policy on this, and are we allowing that right now, and what would be the justification for that?
I can address two departments. I can't, Tom Stanley will have to discuss his part. Only because of my experience in those two departments, fire and police. So currently, I think the only fire vehicles that are assigned are the bosses, and they're assigned, and so they have quick response from their house as opposed to going to the fire station and finding the keys and doing all of that stuff, which is typical business practice throughout the country. The second one is the police department, and for at least 30 years, the practice has been throughout the country as you have a take-home car. The reason for that is, and I think the city has done 2 studies on this with the maintenance department, they find out that throughout the country that the vehicles last longer and are better upkept when the person has a personal assigned. They have the vehicle laid out the way they want it. They have all the equipment. They make sure, because it's their vehicle, that everything is done correctly. It's cleaned, and there's a cost savings in maintenance and a better dollar rate when we're turning the vehicles in because of that thing. The cars can last much longer, and even if we have on a schedule that we're leasing them and turning them back so often, the value of the car will substantially be better in care and condition if it's assigned to an individual. It's just has proven time and time again for at least the past 30 years.
Let's say we have 9 patrol officers and they work 3 shifts. So that's 9 vehicles as opposed to 3 vehicles that when the shift changes, the next shift uses the same vehicles. I'm just trying to get clarification here. This is not an argument.
One of the reasons you do that is because at the end of the shift, you're assuming the car is always going to come back and be standing there. If the car's on a call and the person's either at the jail, at the hospital, wherever it is, there's hours that the other person doesn't have a car because there's no extra cars.
And God forbid we have to call those guys in for an actual major emergency. What are they going to drive?
That is the other side of the coin, and once again, I understand the citizens' concern, because if they're not used to that, why is this guy driving? What's the cost benefit for the citizen to have that car at someone's home? But there actually is a cost benefit to having it there for those 2 departments.
I understand that, but the next question is there some guarantee that when it goes home with an officer that it is parked until needed for police purposes?
We have written policies for all the departments. The police department has theirs, Public Works has their written policy. I would doubt, let me put it this way, because I've seen this happen before. They're driving around in Raleigh-Durham in a police car. Trust me, I'll get a phone call, because it's happened before. You know, they are very visible, very, very visible out there. Anything with a logo out there, someone will see it and send me a picture, because we've nailed a lot of people, not here, but we've nailed a lot of people doing that. There's a written policy on this, you know, and it's strictly adhered to. I know somebody had said, let's put GPS devices on. I mean, that's not the term that was used, but, you know, there's pros and cons to that, but I don't think it's abused here whatsoever. And if it is, as I said the other night at the public hearing, pick up the phone and call the city manager.
And I think our police chief just said that we do have LoJack on our police cars.
It's not LoJack any longer, but that's 25-year-old technology.
That was the term
but
that was used.
Most police cars do have a GPS thing, because if they yell into the microphone that they're hurt, you'll know where they are. So that's pretty common in almost all police vehicles now, is to have a tracking device on them. So that tracking device will tell you if you're driving to Wilmington to go see a play with your police car if you decided to do that.
All right, that certainly satisfies my, my points, which were only a question.
The Historic District Planner, ma'am?
Have we, this is not predicated upon whether we lose or keep the ETJ, right? Correct. And my suggestion is, this is a full-time position and a fairly expensive one that we could, at this point, eliminate.
We never filled it. So if you want to eliminate that.
So I'm glad that we went past the vehicle thing, because those are perks that make us competitive. And I want to take care of the employees that are in place. But on the flip side, I would like to freeze every unfilled position and take it out of the budget. Because those are positions that are going to affect next year's budget.
Our planning director isn't filled right now, but we've got to have a planning director. Planning is the best money we will spend for this town. So I need some clarification. I'm just confused because it's listed under development services, and then it's listed under permitting.
Patty, stay for a minute.
That's because the position is funded partially by the revenue generated by building inspections, and then there's also the city input from the general fund.
So it's not a split position. It says permit tech / historic planner. Is that not a?
Currently, that is the way we went. Instead of hiring the full-time HPC planner, we asked our permit tech to work part-time in historic planning.
Right. So the way I look at this budget, it means that we would continue to do that.
There are $0 in this budget for a historic planner. When the decision was made that the permit tech was going to pick up those responsibilities, we zeroed it out. I mean, it might be a line item in here, but I'm looking at it.
It's not in it.
It's got $0 in here.
Okay. And the permit tech / historic planner is primarily paid for by fees from the from permitting.
That is correct.
So that's why I'm saying we don't gain anything by taking that out. Thank you.
That's good news. City clerk, following up on Mark's suggestion about freezing unfilled positions, this has been unfilled for how long? Well, we did fill the position, and the person who was hired became ill, came back, and resigned within a few weeks. So removing that part, how long have we not had a full-time city clerk?
I'm going to have Dory address this. She's the one who gets this. I mean, she's the one who does double duty, that's all, and I think she's going to have to be the one who explains it.
I have been doing that double duty for 18 months or longer now. So, I mean, I honestly probably work between 50 and 60 hours a week or more at times as needed. It's hard for me to separate the two responsibilities because it's just I'm constantly doing something. I can answer more specific questions if you have it. I'm not sure what you would like to know.
Now's not the time. We've got a new city manager. Now is not the time to cut support. I just don't see this as a good idea. We've got staff that's doing multiple jobs. I'm very proud of our staff. And somehow, even with all of these jobs being unfilled, they're still getting the job done. So
Understood, but I have 2 points to make on this. We are looking down the barrel of a very large tax increase, and I do not think that the city can support that. It's going to be very hard on a lot of taxpayers. Second, when we agreed to Dory's position becoming a double duty position, this was presented to us, and I realize this was close to 2 years ago. It was presented to us as something that would work. And we were not presented with the likelihood that we would end up having an assistant city manager and a city clerk. And we already have an assistant city clerk. So I think we're getting a little top-heavy in administration.
When that was passed, I did say we might have to come back and reevaluate this if it got to be too much, and I know I said that.
Though I'm most likely not going to vote on this, I would say that I would agree with Alderman Carroll that that is a discussion for the next city manager to decide whether he fills a vacancy or doesn't fill a vacancy, how he uses the employees that he's got. But if the budget is there, he could do that in the future. That's just my 2 cents worth. So,
And yet we're advertising for a city clerk, and we've got people who've applied. I mean, is the application process deadline passed?
June 25th.
If I can just add, I'm going to keep doing what I can do to help the city because I care. But it is a lot on me at times, and it is overwhelming, and I don't want anything to slip through the crack.
And let me just say, it's not Dory's fault. That is exactly what is going on. There is too much going on, and she's the only one, that knows how to do that city clerk agenda system. And you know what your agendas look like. It's huge, huge.
Dorothy, you're doing a great job. We appreciate you. You're a necessary employee to transition and get Mr. Terrell in place. We know that. We appreciate you. Sorry that you're in this position. The transition is going to affect us, but we appreciate you. I know that all of us do.
So to help the staff out here, since there's been a lot of discussion, I would entertain a motion that we keep the positions as they are now and let the next city manager figure that out.
So moved.
Is that all positions?
Hold on, Patty, what positions are vacant? Can you come up to the mic and explain which ones are vacant right now?
Currently, we have the city clerk that's posted, we have the custodian position, and we have the, oh my goodness, I just drew a blank. No, we do not have that posted currently.
That's 2 different positions?
They explain that there's a director of development services that is vacant. We are working with
We're working with
the consulting firm.
Yes, I don't have it posted on our site. We're working with the consultant on the planning or development services director
So I guess
position.
But do we also need a planner? I mean, I know we're working with a consultant, but are we filling a position to be the director of all planning services, and are we also filling a position as a planner?
No. We have been trying to recruit for a director for 10 months. Recently, we have discussed other options as far as not hiring a director and hiring another planner, but the new incoming city manager would like to continue looking for a director at this point.
What do we do for a planner?
Now, again, that planner is costing us.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Is this one job, planner and director of
We're not looking for a planner. We're only trying to find a director at this point. We have a city planner at Mo.
That director, we're going to be paying a finder's fee of like $30,000 or $40,000 to get that employee. Is that correct?
No, sir, the most it would be 25,000, I believe.
We cannot find a planner. We've gone out 3 to 4 times. We cannot find a planner. We're having issues. People cannot afford to live here. We're not offering a high enough salary. And quite honestly, the reputation is not a good one for the city of Southport.
All right, so I'm going to ask for a restatement of the whole thing, just so we're all clear, okay? Robert, do you want to say that?
So we've got, if I'm not mistaken, we clarified that we have 3 positions in the budget that are not filled, correct? Custodian, city clerk, and director of development services. Is that custodian, city clerk, and director of development services? And the motion is to keep all 3 of those positions in the budget so that our city manager can make a decision, our new city manager can make a decision as to what positions he'd like to fill.
That's the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye and raise your hand, please. All opposed? Okay, it's 3 to 2. In favor of the motion, I should say. Code enforcement, ma'am? Alderman Davis, do you have a question about code enforcement, or is that closed?
Okay. We have added a code enforcement position as a city employee position, in addition to the contractor that we've hired. What do we pay the Derek's company?
Our contract with Alliance is approximately $55,000 a year, and that's for 24 hours a week.
Say the amount again.
$55,000 a year.
Okay. I think that we should either end that contract and keep a full-time code enforcement officer, or continue that contract and perhaps add a day and eliminate this position as a city employee.
I would lean on the city manager for her recommendation. I really hesitate to let go an employee. So it would be my recommendation that instead of letting go of a city employee, we end the contract. But I would rely on the city manager for her recommendation.
I think the biggest issue right now is our current employee in that position is just so new that he's still learning the ropes, and the private company knows all about all of these. I mean, you got right-of-way enforcement. We're going to have a lot of different things we're going to have to enforce. And I know this board, one of their priorities is, you know, enforcing these zoning rules. And the other thing is Derek's been doing a fabulous job with minimum housing. And he knows how to do it, and he gets us through the legal process with minimum housing. So that's the thing. You got somebody who's new-ish, learning, but new-ish, versus somebody who's got years of experience.
And would it be effective if we considered trying to add a day to Derek's services and use one of the permit techs to assist? Would that work?
I think this may be resolved, not resolved. This issue will come up by the end of this legislative session. If we lose the ETJ, then we've already talked about different positions that might have to be rediscussed. So do we wait for that to see what happens, see if that takes its course or not? I just throw that out for consideration.
I just want to say that code enforcement is one of the things that is killing us for decades, or since Charles was here, I guess. So I think I would like to keep both code enforcement, especially we're starting right-of-way conversations out in the community. I mean, I think we need to be as robust as we can be in the foreseeable future. I'll put that in a motion to leave it the way it is.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
We just don't have the money to keep doing this, guys. Like, we have to figure out how we're gonna pay for things, and it can't, the coffers don't overflow every time our budget goes crazy. We can't just go to the citizens and go, well, we were too lazy to cut the budget this time, so we just kept going.
I used to be a really strong worker. I'm getting older and I can't work as hard. The city is the same way. It used to be a very strong entity where we did everything. And we've got that mentality that we got to keep up with that. And it's been declining ever since the mid-'70s, where the county went to Bolivia and we started losing. This hadn't started yesterday. It started in the mid-'70s. And so...
And this isn't a new position. This position has been here a year, so it's not like we're adding a position.
I don't think we really have got it wrapped around what we're going to become. We think we're going to keep going the way it is, but I don't think we really realize what we're getting ready to become without the additional water and sewer funds. I don't think we have a clue. And so it's going to shrink. But while I've got the mic, the problem that we've got is not this year. We can spend the money and get through this year. But we're not addressing the things that are going to affect us next year, and those are jobs. Those are these unfilled positions that if we do fill them, next year we're going to have to come up with the 1.2 for them next year. So we're putting off unfilled positions that we could cut right now and cut to the chase rather than wait till next year to decide. And again, I think we're going to shrink. We're not going to be able to provide the services because people don't like to pay the tax. It's pay for services or reduce services is the future.
Okay, but to refresh everybody's memory, we voted on the empty positions already. So now we're at the
They were not all the empty positions. Those were not all the empty positions, I don't believe. Are there any other empty positions other than the three we discussed?
So we're at the question of a code enforcer.
I'm sorry, we do have currently the 2 part-time building facilitator positions in the community building. That's where we have been negotiating between the 2 and the 1.
So we have the code enforcement issue. We have a motion on the floor to continue as is for the time being, and a second to that. Is there any other discussion on that topic?
So when the new city manager comes in and he has a chance to look at where we are, where we need to go, and our goals on how to get there, at that time, do we sit down and reevaluate everything again?
We've got to trust the folks at the top to make these decisions. We've got department heads for a reason. We're not each, head of a department. That'd be a mess. But
speak for yourself.
Well, you might be the head of police, right? So we've got to trust. Taxes are going to go up this year. Next year, they may not have to. If that person sits there and looks at this, with that fine-tooth comb, we need to be tasked with that next year. But this year, it's so easy to pick and choose things that really aren't going to make much of a difference in this budget cycle. And I believe Stuart, we believed in him to take the job, and we believe that, if we trust him, we should be able to trust him to make decisions about what jobs need to be filled and what jobs do not, and what jobs need to be cut.
Any other discussion on this particular topic? So there's a motion to keep as is. There's a second. All in favor of that motion in reference to code enforcement, please say aye and raise your hand. All opposed? So there's 3-2 against that. So now we have to have some kind of guidance. I'm not sure that we can do it today as to where we go with that. So there's, what?
We gotta know today.
All right, so the question is do we keep
Fire
the...
an employee or fire the third party?
This is not firing, this is a reduction in force. The current employee could be moved into other positions as they are vacated, or if he or she is in.
The temporary comes and stays in a hotel. He lives in a hotel 4 days a week.
It's part of the contract.
Yeah, but
He's not a permanent resident.
The contracting guy is the only one who actually knows, has all the experience, and that's the issue that we have. So the vote was 3-2 to do something. So the question now is, I'm entertaining a motion as to which direction you go to. Do you stay with the people who actually know the law and how it's applied, or the person who is brand new to the job?
So so just to be clear, we either fire an employee or we fire a third party, and the city manager just gave us the advice that we need them both. And we trust our city manager.
We did just vote.
Yeah,
Well, we did, but we can certainly make the motion again.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we keep the contracted code enforcement officer and re-examine the contract to perhaps expand the service.
And fire an employee.
And RIF the employee.
RIF, there's a big difference.
There's a big difference. But the person's without a job, that's correct, bottom line.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Yes.
I need to know what that word means. Help me, I apologize, but help me to understand how it's not firing of an employee.
It's an elimination of a position. It's not a fire. Fire you think of as something as someone did something negative or wrong. I
But the
mean,
person no longer has a
sometimes
job.
positions are no longer needed, and then you have state law that you have to follow. The process is in order to eliminate that position.
The person is then, whoever has lost, the position means that the person who holds the position is not fired, certainly doesn't go into the personnel file as a firing, but that person is given the opportunity to hold any other job that might come available or be existing right now, and to apply for that and very possibly be put in that position. It is not it's a reduction in positions, not a firing of a particular individual.
So, what job would this code enforcement person do, if not code enforcement? Where are we going to put that person?
Well, you know, attrition happens, people quit, people want to be moved to other positions, perhaps are. We don't know. I have no idea what the qualifications of the current city employee holding this position are.
I will not vote against the active city employee being fired, or RIF, whatever you want to call it. The only way I'll adjust this is if we do away with the outside source. And if that's not the case, then let's move forward and we'll keep both and let's get to the next step.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to let this, can we just talk for a minute, sir? I'm going to let the city manager just talk.
All right, my suggestion right now is keep both for 6 months. That gives Stuart until January to come back with a recommendation. The other thing is, if this ETJ bill goes through, you definitely are not going to need one of these. So then the question is, which one do you keep? And as a city manager, I know I would prefer to come back with the recommendation once I know what the pros and cons of one versus the other. So do that and come back in January, and I'll let him know he's got to have a recommendation by January.
And the closeout of the ETJ is not going to be July 1st as we thought. It probably is going to happen, but it'll be sometime after that. So we have to get through the motion that was on the table that was seconded. So all in favor of the motion of rifting the employee who's the code enforcer, please say aye and raise your hand. There's two.
Riff the employee, riff the position.
Yeah, I'm sorry, riff the position. I apologize. Will that change the vote? No. Okay. So all in favor of, or oppose that motion, please say aye. Opposed. There's 3-2. So at the moment, we keep both of them.
Yes. I make a motion, we keep both
the manager, the
positions.
next manager can reassess it because they'll be faced with lose the ATJ or not. Okay?
Motion to approve both positions.
Okay. There's a motion to keep both positions. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. 3-2 in favor of the motion. Close the senior center. Alderman Lowe?
Not the center. We don't have a senior center. We have programs for senior citizens that are run by Parks and Recreation. And I put this in my suggestions with the hope that we would be able to identify how much money goes into operating the senior programs, which would include vehicle use and personnel use. I don't believe we have that. My point for discussion was this. There is an excellent senior center in town, but that is operated by a 501c3, Brunswick, something, with a great deal of assistance from the county. And I looked at their list of activities just for this week. I wish I had the time to do some of this. There's so much that's going on there. I can't see why we are replicating some of this within the city. Plus, we have a building that is that we call the senior building, and that's in use for that. But I believe some of the senior programs may be in the old JC's building as well. I was looking for anywhere that we could save some money, and one of the things I was particularly looking for was redundancies and things that are replicated elsewhere. So before we made a decision on this, I would like to have seen exactly what our senior programs cost us in personnel, vehicle, time, and whatever we put into those programs. This is not saying that we don't value senior programs. I'm a senior. I know that's a surprise,
almost.
but I am a senior citizen, and I like senior citizen programs. But are we spending money that we don't need to because the programs, or even better, more programs, are offered right up the street within our city limits?
The programs that we offer at our senior building are geared differently than the ones at the BSRI. Currently, our total value that we spend on senior programming is $9,150. And so you could, my recommendation would be, and if we need to recoup more of that money, then we start charging more. I definitely would rather see that than than lose it, because we do have some that like to stay within 1 or 2 blocks of their house. They don't like going further. And I'm not sure that the BSRI location is going to stay there. They are looking at finding their own building because it's gotten so busy there with the hotel and the shops and the doctor's office and the restaurants. So they are in the process of trying to relocate somewhere around here because they serve the south end of the county.
Heather, about how many people do you think you serve?
About 30, 35.
The 9,150, does that include vehicle use per staff time?
Yes, ma'am.
I think, Lo, for the other part of this for me too is the senior building itself. You know, I really don't want to invest anything in that building because it is in such poor condition that I would be in favor of losing that building so that the cemetery committee might figure out a way to build up something with the cemetery and take that into the cemetery. So I don't know if we took, I think didn't we, Heather, we took fund for this, that has already been cut. So
that building was an old home that was moved onto that lot, right?
It was. It was. And that building, you know, I mean, yes, you've seen the reports. It's been patched up, but, you know, it still is, it produces revenue because we do rent it out for small gatherings and birthday parties. But our JC building is probably our biggest building rented out the most, and we don't do senior activities in the JC building because it's either our programs or it's rented out.
So what are we going to do for senior programs if we demolish the senior building?
Well, there's probably not much value long-term in saving that building, so continue to allow it to exist. $9,100 is pretty insignificant in this budget, and move forward.
I hate to do it, but I'm going to make a motion that we eliminate the senior programs, and with the intention also of demolishing the senior citizen building in the future. I know that's not in this budget, but and I hate to do this, but so far we're going down a list and not taking anything out. We are approaching this as a let's keep everything in the budget as opposed to look for ways to reduce the tax rate. So as insignificant as $9,150 may be, I think it's important that we consider saving that. So I move that we do so.
Is there a second to the motion? Not hearing any, the motion fails for a second. Number 16, Alderman Davis, is eliminate capital items from the city gym interior.
Okay, we had allocated $75,000 to improve the city gym interior. And again, that is a capital item coming from the capital fund, but it's money, and if we leave it in the capital budget, there's other things that we can pay for.
So what year should we do that? It's
possibly next year. Remember, next year we're going to start getting a lot more property tax from new property tax payers.
But it's money that people have suggested.
Is
Mr.
this
Stanley,
not
do you have
structural?
something to say about
I mean,
this?
some of this stuff it's cracks and structural conversation.
Remember, this is the city gym. not the Parks and Recreation.
Tom Stanley fixes things. There we go. Faulty cord we have to get. That's why we need a new system.
Oh, good. I didn't wear it out. All right. Stop. This is for the interior finishes for the city gym, not the
Mark.
exterior repairs, not the Parks and Recreation building.
Let Tom Stanley address what it's for.
Okay.
So High Caps did come back with a suggestion to remodel some things are falling off the walls, i.e. things like that, cracks in the wall. Here's my suggestion. Since we don't really know maybe potentially how Heather wants the office to look, let us fix the obvious things, reduce this $75,000. We can do that this year, but let's keep in mind, guess what we're going to do next year? We're going to come right back to you with exactly what we want, with another price. It's just going to keep going on and on and on. So if you want to pull it. That'll give us time to regroup, but we're just going to come back next year with the same price or more. I mean, it's just how far do we want to kick the can? But we will definitely do whatever you want to do. That's the only suggestion I can come up with.
The money's sitting there.
So we raised funds before by selling the signs on the walls, advertising space on the city gym. I'm going to get in trouble, but this is the truth. We need to auction those signs off or give them to the people that mean the most to them, and we need to resell to local businesses to raise money to fix that property.
I agree. That's
so
good.
So we've got to go into a fundraising effort. I would like to go with the sign idea again because we have every sign on there. If you called those numbers, you would get a dead tone because they're no longer in business. So let's use the thing to advertise, just like they do the baseball fields on the outside fence. That's how our schools get by with their booster clubs and all. So I know that I'm going to have a few people that are going to be really mad at me, but it's time to move on and raise some more money with using that effort.
And we can certainly do that to repay the money we're taking out. But Lance, this is money that's already set aside.
So just to make the point, if you take the $75,000 out, it does nothing for the tax rate because it's money that's in the capital fund. And so the only way it changes the tax rate is if you reapportion it back to the general fund and say use it to fill the gap.
But Lance, it does. If we reassign it to, let's say, dredging, next year it could help with the budget for next year. So for the whole conversation, whether that's the right thing to do is a different topic, but I want us to be able to clearly state what happens if you choose not to go into the capital fund for X and leave it there because you've now reassigned it. We have a whole list of projects to do next year.
Right. It must go back in the general fund, and then you would have to reapportion it from the general fund next year. Yes.
And one of the reasons why we got here, and one of the reasons why our water sewer rates were so high, is because previous boards kicked the can, and this board has suggested that that's not who we are. That we're going to address the issues today, and it's not going to be easy to do that, but I think it's important that we do. The money's sitting there. Let's sell the signs. Let's sell more signs. Let's put the money back. If that's in fact what we're going to, I don't hate Mark's idea. So, I'll bake something for a bake sale, whatever we got to do, right? So, but right now it's about this budget, and the answer is keep the money there.
Well, I think that I will make a motion that we put this into the general fund, into the capital improvement fund, and then reallocate to the general fund, which I think, as you know, should be reduced.
I'm not tracking, ma'am, I'm sorry. What is it that you want to do?
I would like to, since this is in the capital improvement fund, I would like to eliminate this from the budget, reallocating this from the capital improvement fund to the general fund.
All you have to do is just eliminate it from capital, and next, in July, we're gonna come in with a whole list of items that you've gotta close out of capital, and we'll move it to general fund. So right now, all you gotta do, if you're gonna do that, is eliminate it from the capital.
I move we eliminate this from the capital improvement fund.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor of the motion, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. It's 3-2 opposing that.
My next suggestion was that we, and Mark has already made an excellent argument, this wasn't just bands at the concerts. This is for example, the signs in the gym. I agree. They're historic artifacts now, and there's money to be made. This is the increasing our revenue by offering those spaces for sale. I believe we would probably do very well with that. And an example, for example, I can cite that over at the dog park on Oak Island, the Bill Smith Park, the dog park fence is covered with signs for businesses that are sold for a nice amount of money, and they sold for 1 year, and you have to buy your next year. That covers the expenses of maintaining that park. Looking for ways to raise money this way, I think, is a good idea. This is not something that deals with this particular budget. It's just something to think about for the future. Getting corporate sponsors to pay for the bands that play at our concerts. This came up at Parks and Recreation Committee meeting this week, and that's a good idea, so that we as taxpayers don't have to pay for it. And moving right to 18, can we start thinking about a police auxiliary to help the police and alleviate some of the burden on sworn peace officers? I've never been in law enforcement, so I don't know what kind of duties this would entail, but possibly some directing of traffic and so forth. I see the chief getting up. Are you leaving, or are you going to enlighten us?
I get a really big head when they put a security vest on me and let me direct traffic at the 4th of July. If they give me a badge.
Can I get a gun?
Said
I got a good job for you. Robert can be our golf cart inspector. We'll need your help starting Wednesday at 9 a.m. at the market. So you can back him up there, Miss Karen. So the volunteer services program, of course, my major is sitting over there. He's going to love this, but that is something that we've talked about entertaining ever since I became the chief here. As you know, I came from the sheriff's office. I was there right at 21 years. That was something John Ingram wanted started, so I actually helped start the Citizens Academy, myself and another sergeant, so I understand the value of that, and we do have citizens here in Southport that have asked about a similar program. However, we've kind of backed off of it over these years because, number one, we don't really have a large enough space. However, we're moving into a new location. This may help us with some of that, but the experience with the sheriff's office, once we get them in there, they want to be active, they want to be doing things, so we did not have a lot of room for them to do that. So there is some benefit for training them to do traffic control and different things. We've got several different things we did with the volunteers at the sheriff's office when I was there, so that's something we definitely could look at doing now that we're getting into a little bit of a larger space. But with that, again, there's cost, because they're going to want traffic. We got to end up supplying with traffic vests and, you know, shirts and things like that. So we would have to come back to you to expand some budget items. If we were to do, I've had some wanting to do like the Citizens Patrol that you see, and they can be beneficial at a lot of these functions that we have, helping at the crosswalks. What we did there at the Sheriff's Office, we took an older police vehicle when it expired, such as the vehicle that y'all voted to do away with. It's not ever used. We could use that, put some amber lights in it, and we could use that. So the idea is a good idea. We just have to grow into it. So if that helps some. And it does help. There's some monetary value. I'm sure you've probably seen the reports back from the sheriff and how it does help with manpower and stuff like that.
Chief.
Thank you.
Sir.
While you're at the podium, do you have room for 2 part-time employees who have been loyal to Southport for 30 years?
Well, we'll look at that, Alderman Spencer. Like I said, we're trying to move in. Actually, we're getting very close to moving in that building, so we'll have to look once we get in there and get settled and see what kind of inflow of folks that we have coming in and the needs that we'll have there.
I really would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Davis, are you satisfied with that response?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to the end of that particular document.
Yeah, the only other thing I know you have to vote on is the motion to take out the 1 cent for capital and the use of the fund balance.
Is there a motion to take out the 1 cent and the use of the fund balance?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
How much of the fund balance?
45,000.
Just
And it's the same thing of, anyway.
It's one-time money for reoccurring costs. So
Any other discussion?
We have a new city manager coming in who we just went through all of the positions and things that we're waiting for his guidance on. So perhaps this would help bridge us a little bit while we have that coming into place. And then perhaps we won't need it, looking at it as recurring costs going forward.
restate the motion and I'm ready, please.
Yes, I did. I move that we remove 1 cent of capital from the budget from the capital improvement fund and 1 cent from the fund balance.
Thank you.
Lance, can you give him a motion that would work?
Are we trying to eliminate the 1 cent for the capital? Okay. All right. So this is not a motion, but just as discussion, you technically don't need to use any fund balance because we have more in the capital fund that is in today carried forward that is in the expenditure amount. So I think that I think your only motion is to eliminate the 1 cent tax designated to build the capital fund and to any use of any capital expenditures that exceed the current reserve would have to come from the general fund.
Is there a second to that motion?
But now I'm confused. So
I am too. So
I was looking at reducing our fund balance to help cover the.
No, that's a different thing.
I would prefer this was just the 1% and not deal with the fund. Just the 1 penny that we had for capital improvements. I would rather just leave it at that. Otherwise, I'm going to vote no.
So, Alderman Davis, would you accept that as a friendly amendment, or do you want to go through the motion that you've made? So the motion is to reduce, as I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, Alderman Davis, is to eliminate the 1 penny that would go towards the capital improvement plan. Is that correct?
Say that again?
It's your motion. Well, I'm going to let you say the motion, but am I correct that you're trying to eliminate the 1 cent that would go towards the capital improvement plan. Is that what your idea was?
No, it's 1 cent from the fund balance.
No, it's.
No.
No, it's the 1 cent that we're talking about that for the capital improvement.
It goes to capital improvement.
Which I think we should have adopted as a reoccurring thing, but
Okay, if you look at the CIP in this budget document, right here, right now, there's a penny increase in taxes towards the capital and $266,296 of general fund surplus towards the capital. You don't need those two items in order to pay for what you've set aside for capital. So what you need to do, if you so wish, is to eliminate the penny increase in taxes and use of the general fund surplus that is proposed for the capital list. And then you'll still have enough money to fund the capital items that you currently have approved.
And that would reduce the tax hike, Alderman Kemp, the 5.1
cent.
Okay.
Because
all
we
right.
didn't do anything else today that would have reduced the.
Right, okay. So so that's the motion, I believe, and the result of that motion would do the following.
Okay. I'm not satisfied with a 5.1% tax rate, so somebody else can do that.
Yeah.
On the motion on reduce the tax rate by 1 cent, correct?
It's to take the penny away that was proposed to increase year after year the capital improvement fund, and that would knock it down from 6.1 to 5.1.
And reduce the general fund surplus.
Yes. Yeah.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor of the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Holy moly. All right. So, since we're on the budget issues, these are the topics that were turned in. Are there other discussion points that you'd like to make now so staff would be able to modify the documents if need be so that we can have the vote on the 26th?
Have we removed the EV charging stations from the budget?
We have not addressed that topic yet.
I will address it. Again, I think that this is, even though we would get some funding, that still means we have to pay something for it. And this is, if there's a need for this, private enterprise is going to jump right in and do it. If there's a need, we'll see it at the pantry, we'll see it at Walmart, probably at the hotels. We don't need to spend money to save money.
I move that we remove the EV charging stations from the budget. I believe it's at a $40,000 line item.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on it?
I would encourage y'all to all sign up for the Electricities Conference, where you can go and talk to people that know a lot about this. And you'll learn a lot about this. As a matter of fact, you'll come home scared that you won't have gas stations anymore. 2 or 3 years ago when I went, I came home believing we wouldn't have gas stations anymore. So it's very enlightening, and we need to talk to the industry leaders about how they're handling this. So good opportunity in August.
Any other discussion?
I just want to point out that this is an 80-20 grant. We are only paying 20% of the value of this. So there is...
Yeah, for a board that talks about creating income streams and then looks at this and says, no, what the, I mean, where are we? This is an opportunity, and it's a big opportunity. We had a speaker who spoke, I guess last week, and you know, with a lot of misinformation, talking about the number of EV vehicles in Brunswick County. Those are not the people that will be charging here. It's the tens of thousands that come to Oak Island and Southport throughout the year that will be taking advantage of that, and they don't have it right now. So they cannot charge at the houses that they're renting. They're going to Leland. I think our, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Lance or y'all could, we're paying about 5 cents per kilowatt hour right now, our wholesale cost. 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. You can charge 58 cents per kilowatt hour. The average charge is more than 100 kilowatt hours at an EV charger. So,
hold on a sec, gang. Lance just reminded me of something. This is not general fund. This is in your electric fund. So this is a moot point if you want to do anything with the tax rate. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. That's why we're here.
We just don't have the 40,000.
it's in the electric fund, which is so healthy.
But how long will it take to earn the $40,000 back when we charge for the charging?
Very quickly.
Okay. What kind of real estate is this going to take up?
I know we've talked about this. I would actually think that the best location for the city would be at between the bathrooms and the fire auxiliary, the substation.
The Baptists are going to love you.
They already love us. You helped that last week.
Amen.
That's prime parking.
It is a great location. These people can use the bathrooms. They are within walking distance to shops and restaurants. It is and again, we can go back to our parking study before we finalize that location, but for EV chargers, for people who are charging their vehicles, they're looking for locations like that they can walk away. There's concerns about idle rates and things like that. You charge you charge if someone's not charging. So if they're plugged in and they're not charging, they're not benefiting from that, they're being charged anyway. So not necessarily for the electricity, but for the time that they're there. They're plugged in. So.
I'm sorry, I take my EV and I just
Well,
park
those
there.
people get towed.
We don't do that.
Because we don't have them yet. But if we invest this $40,000, we can.
So
Tom, good news. You're going to get a tow truck, too.
This is in an electric fund that is very healthy, and to take this out is just insane. Lance, thanks for making that note.
I guess my biggest issue here is the parking spaces, because it's less than 5% of the population has these vehicles now. So a lot of times those parking spaces will be empty. If you park there to go to anything in the city, you're in violation of that parking rule. And so
It's two spaces.
Well, certainly we can allow
last time they spoke, it was 4.
So the electric fund is what's paying for dropping the power lines underground, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we don't pay $40,000 for EV chargers, we can put that money towards dropping our power lines underground.
I agree. And if this is such a sweet moneymaker, then let it be a moneymaker for private business.
You have asked to find opportunity to make money. For the city to make money. And I don't think I've seen a single example of that from this board, except for a couple of, things that don't make money.
I'm going to have to be the rainmaker here. And the only reason I say that is because we have our attorney on in like 60 seconds. So we have to go into closed session. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there, all in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand.
I'm sorry, will you state the motion? To do away with?
Right.
And it's coming out of electrical.
So that's the motion. So, I'm sorry, let's do it again. All in favor of that motion to eliminate it, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so it's 3-2. Now, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye, please. Any opposed? We're going to be in closed session. We'll be back.
Hey, guys, lunch is coming at noon, so just, you're not gonna starve.
I'd like to entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. Is there any discussion? I'm not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. I am now going to take a recess. We'll be back after 30 minutes. I'd like to call the meeting back into order. And we are now up to setting a date for discussion of the inclusive playground.
Oh, no, I think you were at film fees.
I'm sorry?
Film fees.
Well, you're
Lance,
right, you're right.
are you
Film fee.
comfortable with the budget? You need anything else from these guys? Does somebody need to say we're gonna, or did you vote? I'm sorry, my mind's gone.
We didn't vote on the budget, no.
Well, I mean, we need to do budget ordinances. So is everybody happy with the 5.1?
That's what they had, yes. They had the last chance to discuss it.
Okay?
So you
you're
can go
happy?
back and start.
I think I've got all the notes, yeah.
The only,
Okay, the filming fees.
Could I make it clear that I am not comfortable with this budget, but this is not the meeting at which we vote on it?
Yep.
I've said my piece on these and voted on in our efforts to reach consensus.
It is. Yes, ma'am. Duly noted. All right. So the filming fees. This is an issue which I guess going forward, I'm going to try to encourage we do this on more things, though at the moment there's only one citizen sitting in the room. And that is, if we're going to change the fees, we should make sure that the public is fully prepared to discuss those things. For posterity, the issue, there's like two major fundamental issues here. One of them is that are we trying to encourage filming to take place in the city? At one time we were trying to encourage that, and so our fees were artificially low. And so is that with a stance we still want to be? And then two, regardless, are these fees worth the effort of closing down roads and streets and stuff? And the third part, I'm going to see if Elena comes to it, and then if not, I'll ask her a question. So, ma'am, it's your thing.
Awesome. So I am first going to talk about the summary of the proposed key changes that the rate committee came up with. That would include filming fees increased from $150 to $250 per day, equipment on locations fees increased from $50 to $100 on non-filming days. The JC building fee increased from $100 to $200 per day. Addition of 2 new filming locations, Indian Trail Meeting Hall at $500 a day and Fort Johnson Museum at $1,000 per day. Then fire inspectors' hourly rate and special inspection fees were removed and marked as to be determined, so it would be based on a per production, and those fees would be given to me by the fire inspector's office. And then the public services staff category was added at an unspecified rate. Again, it would depend on the type of production, and that estimate would be given to me by public services.
I'm sorry, ma'am. On this, it has a price for public services staff.
Does it?
It says $60 regular time and $90 for overtime.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. The copy that I had saw left it open-ended. I understand. So comparatively, how do we stack up to our neighboring municipalities? Boiling Springs Lakes has a lower and less varied property usage fee, and our schedule offers higher filming day rates, and theirs is just very simplified. Ocean Isle Beach also employs a more variable fee structure, including a range of impact-based fees, and offers more specific and lower rates for equipment and personnel. Leland emphasizes a security deposit and a full cost recovery for additional services without charging specific location fees for town property usage. So they're very specific about getting fees back for services from the police department, fire department, etc., but doesn't really have much by way of location fees. Wilmington offers a flexible fee structure with customized charges based on specific production needs, whereas Southport maintains straightforward fixed rates. So Wilmington's very much so varies on the type of production, how long they plan to be here, etc. And the new Hanover County itself adopted a flexible reimbursement-based approach, focusing on reimbursement of direct expenses and monitor fees rather than fixed location fees. So if one location ended up being more expensive than another, they'd have the flexibility to charge differently, and also charge differently based on how long those productions would be in those places. Overall, the City of Southport's fee schedule offers a higher filming day rate and more details on varied property usage fee structures compared to neighboring towns. Southport's fee structure is detailed and fixed, providing clarity and predictability for production companies, whereas neighboring towns and counties offer more flexibility and variability in their fee structures, which then cater to specific production needs.
Do our fees take into consideration the meeting with them prior to game day and all of that? Do we charge them for that?
No. We do not charge prior to production coming to town. Most of these meetings take place electronically.
Okay, so from the police and fire perspective, there's not a lot of research that has to go in or man hours to be able to figure out how we're going to do this on game day. Is that a correct statement? Okay.
Do we have numbers for Carolina Beach?
I'm sorry, no, I wasn't able to pull their numbers in time for this particular meeting. I'd be happy to come back later. I did put in records requests for other places nearby. These were the ones that I was able to obtain before today.
And the reason I asked specifically for Carolina Beach is there's a TV show in production that uses Carolina Beach a whole lot, as well as Southport occasionally, and I'd like to see how we stack up against Carolina Beach for that reason. Coming from private sector, I've worked with hotels that when we closed our lobby for a day, we got paid $50,000 for the day to close the lobby for a TV show. It was the Hyatt Regency Pier 66 in Fort Lauderdale, before our renovations were completed. So I do know that these fees are nominal for the production companies when they're going through to do these productions. So I think we have an opportunity to look at this, and I think that this, and part of the discussion in the past has been our business owners and our citizens who are affected by the road closures during these productions, and how they might be compensated for their time as well. And I understand we've said that each business owner needs to negotiate that, but barring a letter that goes to that business owner prior to, it's really not presented to the business owners that they can go and have those discussions. So I remember when there was a TV show filming here that often used the last block of House Street, those business owners were negatively impacted during that time, but they didn't get any compensation for that. So we need to make sure that those businesses that are part of the reason that everyone loves to come to Southport aren't being left out of the conversation as well.
Would you think that potentially a workshop in which we actually go to each shop on how and more and suggest that they come to this workshop, probably in the evening, to talk about fees and more importantly, how we, the city, might help them be able to figure out what the just compensation should be for them? Like they would have to have records for each month, because each month around here is different, of how much you take in. But if it's in June, what's your daily average June income? And then you could start the negotiation from that point. But I'm not sure that everybody understands how they can get what they're really entitled to, because, tell me if I'm wrong here, please. I'm not sure that we have reached out in the past to explain that to the businesses. We've left it to the businesses to do their own negotiation, but we haven't helped them, even though we're closing, the city is closing, a road right in front of their building. That stuff will still happen, but help it working with the businesses to understand how they would be able to do that. I'm kind of thinking that we take this whole thing, put it in a workshop, and proactively, not just put something in the port pilot that says we're going to have a workshop, proactively go to the, and they can show up or not. If they don't show up, I can't help them, but at least give them the opportunity. But I'll leave that for the four of you to decide.
I think that's a great idea. I'd love to get the actual business owners' input and make sure that they understand that we are affecting their business by allowing these things to happen. And it might be a positive thing for some of them. They might really like it.
Right.
And for others, it might not be as positive. So at the end of the day, I think that part of the reason Southport has become a destination is because of the filming that has been here over the years.
Yes.
And I don't think that we want to make that go away. I mean, just last week when there was filming in town, I know my daughter was very, very excited to go take some pictures in front of some signage that was put up for the filming. So I think it's still a very neat thing to have happen here. I would like to continue with that, and certainly as a revenue generator for us, for the city. But I want to make sure we're not negatively impacting those that are on the quote-unquote front line of what is happening for that filming.
Oh, Mayor.
Will you make that a motion?
So I don't want it to limit to just filming. We need to talk to our business owners about moving forward, and maybe something like we were talking about with advertising opportunities, things of that nature. I would like to have a bigger discussion than just filming.
And that's actually a great point, Mark, also. So when the street is closed for car shows or other festivals and events like that, I would like to get those business owners' input on those times as well.
I think you're talking about one for the sale sign.
Sure, but again, I'm starting to think about that, and I don't want to pollute the environment with signs, but in different areas that we could have sponsorships of businesses that will generate advertising revenue on our properties, yearly advertising revenue.
We could certainly make it target the first one is the filming, and then put on the invitation other topics are to be discussed. So we get instead of having them come back 4 times, we can do it in one meeting. But I really would like to have this as the number 1 item, and then after that, we can discuss the others.
But we need to connect with our businesses.
We do.
Because unfortunately, they own property, but they can't vote. And that's what it's always been about. During COVID and things like that, they felt like they were disenfranchised, they weren't listened to. We need to have a business summit, and we need to talk about serving the population, not the tourists.
I move that we create a community input meeting with our business owners to be set at a time that works for the city staff and in the future.
In the evening.
In the evening.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
No, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Does that work with you, ma'am? Okay.
Just a quick question, so.
What are we
again,
doing with
because
the
of
fees?
Right, because of the budget.
The film fees, are we,
I move that we update the filming fees to the projected fees on the schedule as presented on the backside.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye and raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. The other one is setting a date for discussion for the inclusive playground. I think this would work. We just got to figure out a date to have that discussion.
What I'd like to do is make a motion to postpone this discussion and add it to our 26th agenda, since we're down 2 aldermen. I'd rather just wait, and if that would be okay with everybody. And that's in the form of a motion.
Is that the July meeting, you mean? Okay.
No.
No, the June 26th meeting.
They'll be back for that.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye and raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The one that is now number 5 that we added was the Cannon Foundation. What that is that we talked about applying for the Cannon Foundation for monies for the weather tower. And we applied for the Cannon Foundation for the weather tower. But it doesn't appear that we can find any copy that we actually voted to do that. So because of that, well, not because of that, we did not get the grant for the foundation, but we did. Each administrator in that organization has $5,000 discretionary funds. And the administrator that was working with us decided to give Southport the $5,000 for the weather tower. I have the document, I have to get the money, I have to sign it, but I have to have a vote from the Board of Aldermen to say we're good to go. There's no matching funds, it's just a flat out $5,000. I would entertain a motion to go forward with the Cannon Foundation application, basically it is, for this $5,000.
So move that we go forward with the Cannon Foundation application to get the $5,000 for the weather tower.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye. It's a unanimous. Thank you. Am I missing anything? That's it, correct? Okay. So the mayor's comments. Again, this has been a long budget cycle. We've worn ourselves out and others out on staff. We understand that, but we do have a fiduciary responsibility. That's just the fact, and we have to ask questions about that stuff. Out of those questions, often than not, the responses help us and the citizens to understand why the money is being asked for, or the positions being asked for, or whatever is being asked for. And so I want to thank the staff and the Board of Aldermen for working through this. There's going to be differences of opinion from time to time, but it's all being carried out in the most professional way. The only last thing I have, and I want to underline this for the benefit of the community, regardless of what you hear, there is absolutely no discussion about the city not working with 501c3s or nonprofits or citizen groups to put on events, to hold events, to keep the city moving. That was never the intent, regardless of how many times that rumor is recycled. It just simply is not true. Is there a discussion about, since groups have pulled out twice now, to take those things and help manage them? Yes, there is. Is there discussions about how the city might reap the benefit since the other organizations are not doing it? Yes, there is. But that has nothing to do with the overall idea that the city cannot work without the help of the citizens. And we are lucky to have the citizens that we have, because they are 5-0 in changing this board's decisions as we went through a number of major things in the past 2 years. So we have a great bunch of citizens. And that is mine, so I'm going to start this time with Alderman Mosteller.
Thank you, sir. I do have a couple of things. One, I would ask that our city manager maybe go ahead and reach out to Bartlett. We are coming to the close of the first phase of Franklin Square Park, and we've allocated $50,000. I would hope that there are two more sections, 2 and 3, and I would hope that we could apply that $50,000 as soon as possible toward the health of the trees, so we start with a clean slate, that all the trees have been addressed. And so if we could do that and just be ready with that, or have an idea of that. And then 2, I appreciate so much staff's patience with this process. A couple of things occur to me. In the case of public safety, I would like to see us create a citizen volunteer committee that's a public safety. I think if we had a committee like that, then there would be out in the community, more dialogue, and maybe we wouldn't budget trying to entertain. Things would have evolved in a more organic way. There used to be a public safety committee in the past, and The second is I would like to see us establish another citizen volunteer committee for traffic and pedestrian committee, headed up by Chief Coring. There used to be a traffic committee when I first came on the board. And so I think that, again, that when we start talking about prioritizing sidewalks and understanding all that, I just think that would be a way to engage more citizens, and we have so many talented people in the community. So I would like to see us consider creating those two committees. And other than that, I am grateful again to staff for all your patience, and that's all I got.
Do you want that on a future agenda?
The committee, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Alderman Davis?
First, Juneteenth celebration is tomorrow, June the 22nd, at Cavanis Park. Parade begins at the Longshoremen's Building parking lot and proceeds over to Cavanis Park. Lots of things will be going on, and this is an important holiday celebration. Try to be there, please. And the other thing I wanted to ask, this is a question for you. How did we come to know about the Cannon Foundation and what it does and what might be available to us either before or in the future?
That was...
I mean, a local citizen brought this to you, am I correct?
It's a local citizen, and you're gonna get to meet him when we get the check. Ralph Brittany, he lives in the Landing. He did all the research. He reached out to the Cannon Foundation, went all the way up to the director to ensure that if we applied for this grant, we actually met the criteria to at least apply. So we didn't apply for something that they were just going to toss out. We made it all the way up to the last 2 weeks of the review, because they came here to do a site visit, which Chief Drew attended, and then we didn't make that round. But the Cannon Foundation has shown a great interest and has asked us to start looking at other things that would fit their criteria for the years going forward, which to me is a great thing. And I have to say 95% of this is because of Ralph. He is on the phone with them, he's made friends with them, and he's pushing. And that is the type of citizens that we have here. Ralph was a city manager, a mayor, all kinds of things in North Carolina. He understands the program, and we need to take bigger advantage of that. So we move forward with that.
When you first mentioned this and you said the Cannon Foundation, I was slightly thinking about Thor, and then you enlightened me that we were talking about the sheets and towels,
yes.
folks. They do have money every year.
They give out between $11 and $16 million a year to North Carolina.
Might we consider, is it possible that we could come back to them again on the weather tower?
I doubt on the weather tower, because they've ruled that kind of out, but they have proactively come to us through Ralph to say that they're very much interested in seeing what else in Southport would fit within their criteria, so that we're not just throwing darts at the wall, that if we apply for something, it fits their criteria. So those conversations will be taking place over the next month. Alderman Kelly.
I just want to thank the staff for their tireless work on the budget process and getting through this. Lance, I know you're not quite finished yet, but thank you. And I know we can sometimes ask a lot of questions that feel like we have asked that over and over again, and I appreciate each one of you coming back to us with answers and certainly responding to all the questions that the citizens had from our last workshop and getting that back to them. Thank you very much.
Alderman Spencer.
Our staff will get us through anything. They have. And so I'm thankful for them. Sometimes I don't realize what my words, how they're interpreted, but I want to be clear. I appreciate every single employee that shows up Monday through Friday, most of the time, has been loyal to Southport. And it's hard to be loyal to Southport. Most of my family has moved away and has not come back. It's hard to be here. And any of these employees that take on that task, I want to support them. And I definitely don't want to be cutting their jobs. So thank you for, I don't think we cut anyone's job today. I do want to find replacement jobs for the 2 part-time employees who we need to find a place for. Otherwise, I appreciate our employees, and I appreciate, this is my 5th year of a budget, and this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I think we were better off when we were broke, like really broke, and couldn't spend money, and our fund balance was 15 and 20%. It made it a lot easier to make decisions. So thank you all for allowing me to be here.
All right, I will close by saying thank you to the city manager for helping us through this, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, it's been motion second. All in favor, say aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.